Hi, I'm Joseph Smith, a horticulture technician here at Boone County Extension Service. I just wanted to show everyone we put a turf grass plot in here just to do a demonstration on different types of turf grasses that we can use in northern Kentucky, and some of the positive aspects of some of them and some of the negative aspects basically. So I'll kind of go through and just show you how they performed. We started this turf grass demonstration back in, it was September of 2018 is when these were first planted. All the plots were planted, seeded, and put in with pretty much the exact same conditions. Very limited amount of input was actually put into these. I didn't use a whole lot of fertilizer, a whole lot of weed killers or anything like that, just to show this is kind of what you get basically for a basic homeowner would probably apply, not anything similar to a lawn care service or any kind of program like that. So that's kind of what I wanted to show, and I'll point out and tell you what was applied as we go over each one. Okay, the first turf grass we're going to talk about is Kentucky 31 fescue. It's a real common fescue that it's used in all kinds of areas around, usually on road easements, things like that. Home lawns also use Kentucky 31. It's an older cultivar. It's been around since the 1940s and was developed by University of Kentucky. As you can see, it's a wider bladed type of grass fescue. So you can look here and see it's a wide coarse blade, which a lot of people don't like that. It's usually a little bit lighter green than some of the newer fescue varieties. The thing is, it's very tough. It handles drought really well. It has a deep root system. So if you don't care too much about the green or the wide blade, it actually is a decent grass to grow. It just doesn't have that well manicured, darker green color that a lot of people like, but it is still good to use in a lot of different applications. Yeah, this grass we're going to talk about now is Inferno Tall Fescue. It's a turf type fescue, which is one of the newer improved types that we're starting to see. A lot of universities are developing these, a lot of private companies. As you can see, compared to the Kentucky 31, it has a finer blade, number one. You can see it has a finer blade, not quite as wide. And the big thing to note is it's a lot darker green. So you have that darker green color without applying a whole lot of fertilizer, just because genetically it is enhanced to where it will be green. So that's one thing to note. You also notice with both the fescues, we don't have a whole lot of weeds in it. We have a little bit. This lighter green here is crabgrass. If you pull it up, you see the root system. It's a spreading type, annual type grass that a lot of people get in their lawns. Usually occurs when you get a real thinning turf because of heat and drought. When a lot of the cool season grasses like fescues, bluegrass, and rye start slowing down in the summer, this stuff starts really growing quick. The thing about this is I did not pre-treat or put a pre-emergent herbicide on any of these plots, which would have eliminated a lot of this. One reason I did is I wanted to kind of replicate what a normal homeowner would probably do to their own lawn, whereas a lot of people don't think about putting a pre-emergent down just because they usually don't go after a weed problem until it's actually there when they see it. So putting a pre-emergent down, you put it down before this germinates. So that's one reason I kind of didn't do a whole lot of different applications. I did put a couple applications of broadleaf weed killer on here, which doesn't affect this necessarily, but I did put those on at two different points during the study just to knock down some of the broadleaf weeds like dandelions, and it also did a good job on henbit and chickweed, which we had a lot of problem with that earlier in the spring, which is a winter annual. It grows over the winter and usually crowds out your turf in the spring. Okay, the next grass we're going to talk about is Kentucky bluegrass, which, as you know, we are the bluegrass state, so most people think, well, bluegrass is the grass to grow in Kentucky. Well, this is not necessarily true. Bluegrass is a high input type grass, which takes a lot of water, mainly, more fertilization to maintain a thick, dense turf. And it's one of the first grasses that will turn brown and go dormant when we have an extended period of drought. So that's one issue that we have with both of these two season grasses, Kentucky bluegrass and the perennial rye. As you can see, you struggle to even find any bluegrass in here. There is some bluegrass in here, but it's very, very few and far between, just because it slowed down and thinned out, mainly thinned out due to a drought we had last fall, which thinned the turf. I reseeded early in the spring to hopefully get this going before warm weather hit. Well, I had a good germination. I had a good stand of bluegrass that started, and as soon as we got an extended period of heat and drought earlier this summer, it actually started being taken over by this crabgrass. You can see the crabgrass just forms these thick mats, and being the bluegrass slows down at this period of time in growth, and the crabgrass speeds up. So basically it just took over the entire plot, and there's just very much, I'm probably going to have to redo this whole, probably 2 of these plots next season and start over with them, just because that's how much infestation of crabgrass they have in them. Next grass we're going to talk about is perennial rye. This variety is called Lynn, which is one of the older perennial ryegrass cultivars. As you can see, it, just like the bluegrass, is completely almost taken over by crabgrass. And the issue that we're having here is this grass, you can see a little bit in here, it's another fine bladed grass, and it spreads very slowly. It's more of a clumpy type grass, and it gets taken over by more aggressive grasses like this crabgrass during the hot, dry season. So one thing to note with the ryegrass, when I sowed this back in 2018, September 2018, it was one of the first ones to come up. It germinated within about 7 days, which was a lot faster than the fescues and the bluegrass. The bluegrass was probably the slowest to germinate. The ryegrass came up very quick and seemed to grow very well in cool conditions. So it took off really good. But then, as you see, as we went through the progression of all of last year and then into this year, it's just totally been taken over by the crabgrass. So that's one thing to consider. Why we always push here at the University of Kentucky always pushes for turf-type fescues, different fescues, because they perform so much better under our growing conditions than, say, something like pure bluegrass or a ryegrass mix, something like that. Because they're just a little bit more sensitive grass to drought and heat, and they will thin out and then will be taken over by a lot of different types of weeds, including crabgrass. The next turf grass we're going to talk about is a warm season grass, which is zoysia. And this variety is called Zenith. It's one of the newer ones. We bought this up at a turf grass farm in Ohio. And actually, this was one of the last ones installed because we had to install a sod because it wasn't available in seed. One thing to notice about zoysia is it's very thick, very cushiony. It almost feels like a carpet when you walk on it. The downfall that most people in this area, this is used a lot farther south, but in this area people don't like it necessarily because it will brown and go dormant, usually probably about the first part of December, late November, first part of December, and will not become green again usually into April. This year, since we had a very cool, wet spring, this particular plot did not green up till May. So that's one thing to consider. A lot of people don't like the grass to look brown or dormant that long. The grass is perfectly fine when it's like that. It's just, it's just dormant and it doesn't warm up as quick because it is obviously a warm season grass. One thing to note, it did get a little bit of crabgrass in it, but not nearly to the extent as the other ones. Just because it's so thick and dense, and it's growing and competing right now with crabgrass because it's warm season grass, and crabgrass is a warm season annual. They both compete, and the zoysia currently is out competing the crabgrass. So that's one good thing about it, is it can out compete a lot of weeds during the summer when a lot of the cool season grasses are shut down for the year. If you want to look over the whole turf grass plots and you can kind of look at them, pan over them, I'm really impressed with the Inferno fescue just because of the dark green color, fairly dense turf, not a whole lot of crabgrass in it. We got a little bit. The Kentucky 31 did good too. Just again, it's got a little bit of crabgrass in it, but the thing is it's just a lighter green and a little bit more coarse type grass. The two losers of the trials I consider would be Kentucky Bluegrass and the Lynn Perennial Rye. Both of those you can see, with minimal inputs, did not fare very well at all in these trials. It's just one thing, if you're willing to put in a lot of time, fertilizer, water, etc., you can have a good bluegrass lawn. But if you're wanting to put very minimum in, you're probably better off going with a fescue or even a zoysia. So I mean, that's basically in a nutshell how this trial went, and just wanted to remind everyone we have a class coming up August 18th on lawn care. So that's one that you can do. It will be a Zoom meeting. And anytime you need any information, feel free to email me, or if you want to drop off a sample of your soil, we can do that here at the Extension office and try to get you set up for this fall for planting seed.